Hello, welcome back to the David Watson podcast. In today's episode, I spoke with Mark, who wrote a book with an incredibly, well, for me at least, an incredibly intriguing title, A Cup of Tea on the Commode. I hope you enjoy the episode. Good morning. Hello again, because we've already been chatting for about 10, 15 minutes. How are you doing? Are you all right?
So far, so good, yeah. I am enjoying my cup of tea in honor of my mother, so I will have a little tea here.
And now that's actually a good place to start, because that's why I reached out to you, because of the book you wrote about the relationship with your mother. So yeah, and just tell everyone what the title is, because it's probably one of the most intriguing titles I've ever heard.
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad you like it. It's called A Cup of Tea on the Commode, and the subtitle is My Multitasking Adventures of Caring for Mom and How I Survived to Tell the Tale. And that title just kind of came to me. My adventures with Mom lasted about 3.5 years, and when this incident started in 2011, she could no longer walk, so we had to set up a commode bedside. And sometimes Mother Nature took a little longer than was comfortable for either one of us. So kind of as a joke, I asked her if she'd like, her favorite beverage was a cup of hot tea, skim milk, no sugar. And I asked her if she'd like a cup of tea while we waited for nature. And she said yes, and it became a hit. So every morning she got a cup of tea on the commode. So she was also a multitasker.
Yeah, because I think probably one of the reasons I find that interesting is my full-time job is care work. I work with head injury patients, so I'm very familiar with routines around commodes and how you have to be adapted to what somebody responds to. And it's one of the things that care work has given me a great insight to is it's an incredible leveler, because you can have this phenomenal person who lived this incredible life, who his nature has effectively just decimated, for want of a better term. It's a constant reminder of, like, because I'm very nostalgic, so I'm always looking back at the 70s and the 80s, like it's the best time in the world, etc., which I'd think that because I was a child and I was naive and had no idea about the world and what worry and stress was. And so it's a very easy emotion to drop into, but the type of work I do reminds me that people get old, and and I'm 50 next month, and it reminds me, it's like, oh yeah, okay, this could be you one day on a commode with somebody trying to get your shoes and socks off.
It's one of the things that I mean, I went to school as I have a degree in industrial design, and in design, it's a buzzword now, but we've always incorporated it for years. I think even from the very beginning, when the first tool was made out of a stone, is human-centered design.
Yeah.
And of course, if you're making a stone that's going to be used as a tool, it's human-centered, and you got to customize that to fit better and be ergonomically, comfortable in your hand and things like that. But empathy was a big word that you have to take into consideration while you're designing, because you have to take the end user in account for everything you're doing, whether it's graphic design, product design, and things like that. And I was very fortunate to have Ohio State at that time was one of the best schools in the country. And then I got to work for two very good design firms while I was in Ohio shortly after. And so empathy was very important lesson to learn early on. And then certainly in caregiving, it's the same thing, because like you said, it's in this case, it was my mother, but she's still a woman. She deserves respect and dignity, and still, she still is your mother. So there is a point where the role reversal is certainly taking place, but it's your mom. So you have to ask for, I asked for permission quite a bit. There were times where I said, well, now you must obey me.
Yeah.
And of course, her in the beginning, that was quite a shift. So I wasn't sure, I said, do you want me to do this? You want me to come here and make sure that you're cared for? as best we can. And she said, yes. And I said, that means I'll protect you and I'll keep you as healthy as possible. Do you understand that? She says, yes. And I said, well, that means that I am now the boss. You must obey me. And her mood completely shifted, and
Yeah.
but she puckered up for a kiss. And I wasn't sure if that was a surrender or a wishing me luck gesture. And so I gave her a kiss, and I hope for the best. But luckily, she had a good sense of humor, and both of my folks did. So we all. I also told her, I said, if I do this, so I moved from LA. I was a carefree bachelor with no children, and I moved back into my home in New Jersey to care for my mom. So my first child was this 90-year-old woman, and so it was somewhat of a learning curve. But I told her, I said, we're going to have fun, and that was my goal. I wanted to make her laugh at least once a day, and luckily she made me laugh quite often as well. So
'Cause it's an interesting dynamic shift in terms of relationship, and it's on two different levels. Because one, it's your mum, and it could be your mum, your dad, a sibling, or whatever. So you have this kind of pre-designed cognitive landscape of who they are. This is with the happy memories, the bitter memories, the habits that get on your nerves. But then you have a human being that now is vulnerable, and and it's a balance between the empathy that is essential to be able to enable them to get through their day, and to support the dignity. Dignity is a big buzzword in care, and it's very hard to provide any form of dignity when you're doing personal care with people, because there's nothing dignified about it. When somebody gets to a point in their life that they need your support to just toilet and clean themselves, that there is, no matter how hard or sympathetic you are, it's not a dignified gesture, if that makes sense.
mm-hmm.
And it is, and I am fascinated by that dynamic, because obviously it's something that I work in, but I'm slightly detached because they're not my parent. And maybe I'm prepping, and I should be careful here in case my mum listens, but maybe I'm prepping myself. Actually, I might just pass that over to my sister. But it's how did you manage that balance between, and you've mentioned the humour, but respecting that it's your mum, but being pragmatic enough that, well, this is what we're doing.
Right. Well, so I was in LA when this thing happened. So a few days after her 89th birthday, she just kind of shut down. And we discovered that she was really depressed. She was living in her home. At that point, she could walk and did some, but we had someone come in to help her with her personal hygiene. We had a family living upstairs that were managing household duties and supposed to keep her company and do the cooking and laundry and stuff. But she didn't get along with these people, and that became very evident when the outsiders would be my other siblings and I, who lived far away, would come visit, and we would notice the tension in the house. But my brother, who hired them, was a really good guy and didn't want to fire him. And also, this particular family, I think, took advantage of everything that was offered to them. And hid the fact that they really, I think, hated my mother.
Yeah.
And because she could be a challenge, and I knew that. We all grew up with her. She was a very stubborn, independent woman, and my dad was a very stubborn, independent guy. So sparks flew quite a bit in our upbringing in the house. And but they were a Catholic couple, and they stuck together until they died. So I guess there's something there, but. So she deserved better. When we went back, we were on death watch because she was in bed. She was I call it a semi-comatose state. The doctor cut off all meds and food and said, call hospice. And when hospice comes, the end is usually not a good one. And so we didn't know how long mom was going to be with us. And so my younger sister and I hung out with hospice and learned what we could, because we wanted to take care of our mom as best for as much time as we had left with her. And so we learned how to take care of any medical needs. We learned how to change the bedding with the helpless patient in bed and things like that. But she responded a little bit to touch, but she never spoke any words. And but I think she sensed that we were there because she would moan a little bit, and one of us always slept with her in the bed, just in case. And after about 3 weeks or so, she snapped out of it. And I think it was, I have a chapter in the book called A Silent Scream. And I think it was a cry for help. She wanted love back in the home and certainly in her life. And so I realized that she needed this and she deserved better. And I had a really good relationship with both my mom and dad. I was a very curious kid. I was the fifth out of the sixth. And I got them to open up about things. I was almost like a marriage counselor at one point, in high school and things like that. And I got them to open up. And in the house was a little difficult, but each of them, when I moved out, sometimes they would come and visit me together, sometimes alone. When they were alone, they were great because I
Yeah.
would get them to open up even about the relationship. My dad and I had the sex talk when I was in my 30s, and I'm giving it to him, because I was curious what happened in this marriage.
Yeah.
And they were great. And so my mom, I know, trusted me. And not everybody's equipped to take on this role, but I made the decision to do it. At that point, I was an actor in Hollywood, but I was in my 50s and things were kind of slowing down. For me, I had a snack food company that was also slowing down. We had a really good run, but it was we just lost our national distribution, and I was able to maintain it kind of on my own. My brother handled East Coast sales, I handled West Coast, and I manufactured everything in my own factory. And so when this thing happened, the decision to go home and take care of my mom was easy. Working out the logistics took a little more time. But I think once I made that decision, it seemed like the whole universe helped support it. So all these things kind of fell into place. And but again, yeah, you're a son, and this is your mother, and you're seeing your mother, your 90-year-old mother, naked for the first time. And this is kind of when the acting kicked in, because I said, I'm taking on this role of the caregiver. And so get over it and get on with it. This is the new your new job. So yeah, it was a bit of adjustment in the beginning, but the quest, I guess, was more important than any uncomfortable. And I wanted to make mom as comfortable as possible too. So I didn't want her to know that this was a little weird. And so I tried to add some romance. I did my best to add some to restore some dignity. One of the first things I did is I bought her a new wardrobe.
Yeah.
Because wanting to feel pretty and look good does not end at 90. And I had a bit of I guess a romantic side of me with my Italian side, and so I bought her a new wardrobe, and that cheered her up quite a bit. And I created a thing called Day of Beauty. My mom worked full time. She was a proofreader for the largest newspaper in New Jersey, so she worked full time. My dad was a chemist. And but she treated herself once a week to a trip to the beauty salon,
Yeah.
where she got a shampoo and set and had her nails done. She had beautiful, natural long nails. She was a nail model or hand model when she was in her late teens, early 20s. So she really cared about those nails. And I don't know when the last time she was at a beauty parlor. When she came to visit me in LA, I would take her to my friend's salon in Beverly Hills and give her the movie star treatment, and she always got a kick out of that. And so I said, okay, we're going to do a day of beauty. I'm going to recreate the salon treatment at home. So normally I gave her sponge baths in the morning and the evening, and so on a morning, we originally did it on a Sunday, but she was a good Catholic girl, so she said we can't do this on Sunday. So I moved it to Saturday, so we averted our sure trip to hell. And so while she was on the commode in the morning, I soaked her feet in Epsom salts. I washed, shampooed, and rinsed her hair, and then when we were finished with the commode, she got another sponge bath. and a massage and any tended to any medical needs, and then body lotion up and down and baby powder and all that business. And then she chose her wardrobe. And then I blow dried her hair and put it in a ponytail or a braid. Now, I grew up with three sisters, so I learned more than just to put the toilet seat down.
Yeah.
So those all things growing up, watching all this stuff with all my sisters had long hair. And at this point, my mom had really long hair, which was, I don't know when the last time she had long hair, but certainly before six kids. And she just loved that. And then I did her nails, painted her nails, and then gave her a nice bright red lipstick. And I didn't think that much of it. It was just the son, trying to treat his mom nicely. And then as I would wheel her in, again, at this point she couldn't walk, so I would put her in a wheelchair, and I would wheel her into the kitchen for breakfast. We had a big mirror in the dining room on the way in. And so as I'm passing that mirror, I stop, I park her in front of that mirror, and I lean in and I said, "Who's this pretty girl?" And she just beamed.
Yeah.
And it was, I realized the power of that little gesture. And every morning I parked her in front of that mirror, even between, the days of beauty, and just said, "Who's that pretty girl?" Because I don't know when the last time she even looked in a mirror, but I don't know when the last time she looked in the mirror and liked what she saw, and I realized that, no, they're still want to look pretty. My dad, a couple days before he passed, we gave him a shave.
Yeah.
He wanted to be clean shaven, and I don't think he knew he was going to be gone in a little bit, but that was important to him. So my sister and I gave him a nice shave, and like me. But
and
it was lovely. And then also what my mom did, it's so French.
Yeah.
What was lovely with my mom is she loved it, but also it was infectious because she was so happy with her new wardrobe and looking pretty and feeling pretty that everybody around her seemed to pick up on that. So everybody's mood shifted. And then I ended up renovating the entire house because that house was in disrepair, and it wasn't the beautiful, welcoming home that I grew up in. So I renovated the entire house during this journey because my mom slept a lot. And what was fun is I kept her abreast of everything I was doing. So when I finished one floor, I would let her, let's say, pick the paint and the carpet samples and things like that. There was some funny stuff. So while I'm doing the renovation, usually after breakfast, I'd park her in the living room, which should sit in her comfortable chair and watch mostly the Animal Planet. She was a big pet lover. And so I would go out to the Home Depot and pick up all the materials for the basement. And so I'd constantly be walking back with 2x4s and sheetrock and things like that. And she would, every day we had the same conversation because she had a little bit of dementia. So she'd just go, "What is going on?" And I said, "I'm renovating your house. It's going to be beautiful again." She goes, "Well, who's paying for all that?" I said, "Well, you are. So you better cheer up because you may have to go back to work." And we had that conversation almost every day. And then when I finished, I would carry her down there, and she loved it. I don't know what she remembered of the old basement, but she loved the new one. But one day when we were doing the carpet, I had to choose the carpet sample. So I had 3-inch sample carpet samples. And so I narrowed it down to 2, and then I put those on her breakfast tray. And then went out to fill up her sippy cup with some new juice. And I came back, and she had one of the carpet samples in her mouth and a scowl on her face. And she said, "This is not a cookie." And I said, "No, it's a carpet sample. Which one tastes better?" And she chose well. So she picked the right one. And so we had some fun during the renovations as well. So she had, again, her sense of humor kicked in quite a bit. And luckily she passed some of that on to her kids. So that was an important part for me as well.
It's interesting because you've touched on something in quite a lot of detail that I find that I explain to people I can't teach. So I can teach you a care plan. I can teach you a care routine. I can teach you a medication routine. I can teach you how to transfer somebody so you don't hurt yourself. That's all part of things I have to teach. I can't teach people to see a human being. And quite often what I see in care is not through anyone's fault, because I find it's something you can either do or you can't. But they switch to the person in front of them is almost an inanimate object, like the clock on the mantelpiece.
Right.
And they don't see, because that person is quite often unresponsive to a lot of things, they don't see the integrity of the individual and the personality of somebody who, because your mum on some level would have memories of her childhood and her parents and maybe her grandparents, would have memories of you as a child, would have memories of going into the the beauty salon to film like to be like a film star. And that, when a carer comes along, can be lost sometimes, because they will just drop into this kind of factory routine. I've got to wash you, I've got to clean you, I've got to put the bins out, I've got to do this, and forget the little gesture of who's that beautiful girl in the mirror, who's that, and it's something that I discovered. You can't teach people. They either get that it's a human being, or they don't.
Yeah. Well, that's where the empathy comes in.
But how did you hold on to that? Because I think it's just who you are, but it must have been.
I think, well, I grew up in a very, I guess, loving, nurturing home where my dad's favorite prayer was others, where he always considered others before himself. And whether that's from the Catholic teachings and all that stuff, I don't know. But it certainly made me feel good. One of the interesting things, so I wrote the book. I took a lot of notes during our journey, mainly because I loved recording family history. And I had these precious conversations and moments with my mom that nobody else was going to be privy to unless I recorded it. So I kept these notes to share with the family because I didn't want them to miss out on these little things. And now I totally forgot where I was going with that. What was the question again? How did I hold on to that?
Yeah. How did you hold on to that empathy of always seeing your mother and those little gestures?
Oh, okay. So that's where I was going with this. So it made me feel good.
Yeah.
So whether it was selfish or not, my mom was the priority, but I got a lot out of it. And I think that, okay, so this is where I was going with this. So it seemed like my mom was crying for help. And so I moved cross country and moved into my mother's home to give her some joy and happiness for the last years of her life. So it seemed like I rescued her. And after I wrote the book, and maybe even during, I started to realize that, you know what, maybe my mom was rescuing me. This was a cry for help. I mean, I had a good life, a very adventurous life. I've done some good things. I had a lot of, let's say, business failures and things like that. But I had no real, with not having children and never married and stuff like that, I had no significant relationship at the time. This gave me a real purpose that certainly made me feel good. And I also learned, maybe for the first time, unconditional love and what that's all about. Because no matter how difficult this was emotionally, physically, and mentally, it's exhausting, especially when it's your loved ones. It's 24/7. Whether you're doing chores or not, you're worried. Are they going to be alive in the morning?
Yeah.
When is she going to call out in the middle of the night and things like that? It's exhausting, but it's like, okay, but I'll have to get out of bed. I've got to do that. I've got to be ready for this because she's my kid. So unconditional love was a super lesson for me, and a lot of that I think just came out of my upbringing because all my siblings are all seem to be really good people, and my parents were good and they cared, and we never really needed anything. We were provided with a lot of stuff, and we weren't a wealthy family. We're a nice middle-class family, but we learned values, and some of that was also, I guess, the Catholic upbringing. And people ask, well, why did you do that? Because some people said, oh, you were a saint to do that. And I said, honor thy mother and father. I
Yeah.
mean, come on. They brought us in to this world, and they deserve to go out with, as best we can, some dignity and respect, and hopefully maybe a joke or two.
Yeah, because
So
I don't think it's any coincidence that we see the world where it is today versus when your parents were alive, and by
yeah,
no means was it perfect. And I often say on the podcast, it wasn't easier. But it was simpler,
yeah,
and a lot of that stemmed from just the discipline that came from faith in Christianity. Just, yeah, this might be, you might not like it might not be comfortable. No one's asking you to. This is, you reap what you sow, which was an
yeah,
extension of not just your mind, but actually your community, and how you invest in the people around you is what you reap.
yeah.
And do you know what I mean? And like your dad's favorite prayer, others, nothing to do with you. I don't care
Right.
about it's not about how you feel about doing it. It's not whether you like it or not. It's
Yeah,
what are you giving to others? What are you
yeah,
giving to your community? And like you say, it's not about being a saint. It's the reason, regardless of whatever religion it is, if you look at the foundation of the basic principles of every religion, it's pretty much parallel. They all have these really simple principles about how you should think, what your mind should be like, what you should do when times are difficult, and how you should help your neighbours.
hmm
And it's
yeah,
really, really simple. But
yeah.
but we've kind of become such a narcissistic society. Everything is fuck you, screw you.
Yeah, how many likes do I get on Instagram and
Yeah,
stuff like that?
yeah,
So,
exactly
um,
that. Says the guy with a podcast who needs likes and views,
yeah.
but there is
So
an
make sure you
irony
do
in,
that.
yeah,
Make
there
sure
is,
you do.
yeah,
So
that's right.
what
Like
was
and
lovely
subscribe.
about my folks too is they didn't preach this stuff. We just watched them do
But they
it.
practiced it, didn't they? It was a
Yeah,
real living thing.
yeah. But we learned it by example,
Yeah,
not by saying, "Oh, you must do this" and stuff like it. It was they were good people, and what was nice about um, writing this stuff. They say, well, like when you write memoir, you're rediscovering yourself
mm.
and stuff. But I rediscovered, my folks and my family as well, and I got to appreciate them even more. And then a lot of people from my hometown have found out about this book, and I wouldn't say it's by my aggressive marketing to the hometown people, but it's lovely because they have shared a lot of their own stories with me because of things that ignited their memories or so in the book, and some have gotten a lot of joy and I guess relief from reading what I went through, and they've learned from that, which is nice. And the sense of humor is a big deal. I had someone who just contacted. I don't know this person, but she's from my hometown, and she would keep me. She said, "I read your book. I'm taking care of my mom. She's 95." And then a few months later, she said, my mom is now 96, and I'm reading your book again because I wanted to
Yeah,
see if I get more out of it. And then she contacted me about a month ago, and she said, my mom passed away 2 weeks ago. And I want to tell you that your book helped me so much because of you made me laugh.
yeah,
And it was wonderful to follow your journey. And that just, it killed me because it's like,
yeah,
I know you pour your heart and soul, and you don't know how the world's going to react to it. And that was just beautiful. And I've had a few people tell me things like that, which is nice. So that was, I guess, the real purpose of writing the book was to maybe help others. I mean, it's entertaining. There's a lot of laughs in it and a lot of fun stories. And my family is kind of a nutty, fun group. And but I don't call it a how-to book. I call it what I did book. If you learn
yeah,
something from it, great. But if nothing else, you'll be entertained. You will learn some things. But my approach, being a childless guy, was very unique, and may not be the best solution for other people. But it was what I did, and Mom was great. She both of my parents, they died in their bed, in their homes. I was with both of them when they took their last breath, and I had a different sister with me each time. And that's the way to go.
yeah.
If you had to pick a way to go, it was great. So
I mean, maybe I'm slightly biased because I'm like you. I'm single. I don't have any children. I've never been married. I actually live with my mum. My mum's 72, I think. If she listens to this and I've got that wrong, she'll no doubt let me know.
Big trouble.
Yeah,
Big birthday cake next time.
that's right. Yeah, and I think that we sometimes, when you don't have your own children and you've never kind of been married, you have a very much an outsider's looking in perspective because probably the same as you, I've witnessed friends growing up with kids and now have grandchildren and stuff, and so I've seen all of their troubles, and because I have no emotional investment in it, I can be very pragmatic about my advice. Yeah. And then it's very easy to say that when you've never had your own children and you haven't had to drag them down the driveway for 20 minutes every day for the last month because you've got to go somewhere, and they're like, oh yeah, but this is a new adventure because that daffodil wasn't there yesterday, and so you don't get caught. And I think that's it, we get caught up in this web of life that can actually drag us down and make us feel trapped and entangled and with no freedom, because once you have children, life is just about your responsibility to something that needs you, that then eventually discards you because you're now in its way and interfering with the life they want to lead. It's quite bittersweet. And I think there's a point where people like you and I, we never get tarnished or poisoned with that. So, so we can kind of jump into things with a little bit more enthusiasm and a little different perspective, because when it comes round to our turn, we're a little bit older and a little bit wiser, and life has chipped away at us in its own little way. So we kind of see things with a different perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And I think and
you have to be open to it. I have a motto that I share with people, and I don't know if they get a kick out of it or not, but again, I've had a pretty adventurous life. I've now, I'm living in the south of France. I didn't speak French. I just decided, I came to this place and I really liked it, and I thought this will be another adventure, so we'll see what happens. And but my motto is to find the joy in it. And so when you make that decision, at least for me, there's so much crap in the world. If we focus on that, that's what you're going to find. But if you search for the joy and say, like with my mom, I said, we're going to have fun. And we had fun. It wasn't all fun, but that was the goal. And so there were moments where she's a child and you want to kill her, but don't. But then there was one time that we had a really frustrating day, and she looked at me and she said, "Why are you doing this?" And I said, "Because you're my mother and I love you, and you deserve to be treated like a queen." And then she says, "You're a good kid," and that was lovely to hear. But it was like, that was the goal. But then I started thinking, why am I doing this? Because this was sometimes just physically, it's really tough. Actually, she almost outlived me at one point. They say that about 30% of caregivers die before their patients.
I could believe it.
And this was almost in our case. So I won't go into much detail. It's in the book, but it's tough. So I started thinking about this too. Why am I doing this? Why am I putting up with this? Because sometimes she could be really tough. And then you see her smile and enjoy a meal that you just made, or again, beaming after a day of beauty, and that's all I needed. Or she loved I call her a kissing bandit. She just loved puckering up for a kiss. So even when you're just frustrated as heck, and she looks at you and puckers up for a kiss, it's like, okay, all is good.
Yeah,
and that's all you needed. So,
because that's probably one of the most important things of the book for anybody who's in this position now, is because when you're caught up in it, you can feel really alone and question why you're doing it. Yeah. And so, for no other reason, that's probably the best reason to read the book. If you are somebody who's caught at the moment, like questioning about the care work they're giving to their parents. One of the things I wanted to just have a discussion about, which has just come about while I'm talking to you, is you seem to have an incredible ability to pivot and go from one thing to the next? Because you said you started out as a designer. Is that right?
Yes. Well, actually, a ballet dancer when I was a child.
Fantastic.
All my, I call my mother our champion of the arts, and she got us all into the arts early on. And my sisters were all ballet dancers, and my brother was 2.5 years older, was like a little star, and he was the only guy in the dance school. And they were
Good learning
performing.
for later.
Pardon me?
Good learning for later in life.
Yes. Well, it was great because, okay, so they were dancing. They were like little extras, but they got great costumes, and they were performing in Lincoln Center, New York, with the Royal Danish Ballet.
Oh wow.
And this was before I got involved with it. So I go backstage to see them. And in the dressing room, some guy bursts in and says, "We need another little kid." Apparently they lost. So it was like one of these Hollywood moments. He looks at me and says, "You want to be in the show?" And I hesitated. I didn't know I was like 7 years old. And then he said, "We'll pay you." And I said, "Okay, that's all I needed. Now I'm a professional dancer,
Yeah.
dancing in Lincoln Center." That was my start. And it was great. So I got paid $5 a show. And then I said, "Yeah, I like this. This is cool." I had a great costume. I looked like a little Errol Flynn. And then I started training at the ballet studio. My brother and I were the only guys in the entire school, so it was great. And but I retired. I butted heads quite a bit with we had a very strict Russian ballet teacher, Irene Fokin. So she and I was a stubborn kid. I don't know where I got that from. But so I quit, I think around 10, definitely by 11. But that performance stuff and enjoying all that was kind of still in me. So yeah, so I was first that, and then a designer, and then I think that the acting and performing bug came about again. So in '84, I moved out to Hollywood, gave up a great design job, but I had a good design job waiting for me. I actually went out there ahead of time and landed a nice job. So I didn't start as a struggling actor, but I started studying from day one. I wanted to be a good actor, so I took it very seriously, and did that, and did that for about 28 years, but also still designed. So I like to. I started a bunch of businesses. I told somebody one time, it was my niece's father-in-law at her wedding was asking me what I did, and I said I started 5 nonprofit companies. And he looked at me like I was Jesus. And I said, "Well, none were intended to be nonprofit." And then we had a good chuckle. But I love the adventures, and you learn a lot from failures, or I would say, let's say, missed opportunities, if we don't want to say failures, and you take those lessons to the next. And so yeah, but
What
part
did
of
you
it
learn?
again is, hmm?
What did you learn?
Well, you learn, let's say, what was good about design, and because it was corporate design and marketing and things like that, you learn how to market. So when I first went to Hollywood, you learn how to, you've got to, no matter, I mean, if you have a really good agent, it's a different story, but I never had a really good agent. So you have to promote yourself like crazy. And then with acting, that's hit or miss because it's just insane. There's so many people trying to do it, but I had a good run, and I have a nice pension coming up in a few years, which was a lovely bonus. So let's say the first thing was a greeting card company, and I did do enough, I think, research for the marketplace to find out how impossible this may or may not have been. And so then the next venture, you say, okay, we're going to do even more research and see what happens. And even though some of them were impossible, because I'm doing the most impossible. I mean, design is very competitive, but I kind of lucked into a lot of that. I went to a good school. I got a really good design job right out of school. And then, but acting was a different story. So that was like I was completely a new fish out of water, and dealing with that. But you learn, I guess, perseverance is a big
Mm.
one. So you say, if I really want that end goal, you don't give up, as tough as it gets. And you keep doing it. But then you have to say, okay, listen, this is not that exciting anymore. Let me try. And that would kind of be my MO. I would get bored early, and I mean that might be the reason I'm single still. I get bored early and then move on to the next adventure. And what was good about the thing with taking care of my mom was there was no moving on. So that was one of my
Yeah.
realizations. I had to say that she's the one in control of this one. So I made this commitment, and I not only made it to my mom but to my siblings because they all trusted me and they yielded, which was lovely because there was no conflict. It
Yeah.
was like Mark's taking over. This is it, and we're okay with that. So I had a lot of people depending on me. So that was a good realization and also a good motivator.
You mentioned that when you were living in LA, you sometimes your parents would come to visit on their own, and
Yeah,
you'd have conversations, and you'd learn a little bit more about their relationship with each other, and obviously the relationship with themselves.
yeah.
Did you find, was there ever a moment where you had an insight into like relationships and what they can really be?
Well, I knew. I guess you know how challenging they can be.
Mm.
I'm in a relationship now, which is over 7 years. Hopefully, she won't listen to this, and it's my longest relationship, and it's challenging. But I told her early on, we went through COVID together, and COVID is that time was a real good test, I think, for any relationships,
Yeah, I think, yeah.
and I think I told her kind of jokingly, but I said, "There's no one I'd rather be miserable with than with you."
I think
Uh,
that's important that people understand that, though.
yeah. So we had a bump early on. She expressed some opinions that I just was a polar opposite of. And she felt the tension in the room. Actually, she was sitting right on the couch there. And she said, "Do you want me to leave?" And this was really early on, maybe the first month of dating. And I had to think about it, but I said, "No, I want to work this out." So there was something in whatever the universe that said, "No, this girl is special. It's not all going to be, the lovely rose-colored glasses and all that business, but this is something, a relationship worth investing in." And we've had a lot of fun. Still, it's a challenge. I have two sisters that have been married forever, and they talk about the challenges of it, but you see the joy in it, and both of them have lots of kids, and one sister is 4 years older than me, has I think like 17 grandchildren,
Jesus.
and it can't be all great, but the what they've produced is pretty special. So and I think we have two rescue dogs, and those are our
I was going to
kids.
say, I've just got a dog, and I'm really good with that.
Yeah, yeah, but boy, they can be challenging
Even for
as
some
well.
reason, I don't resent that. When my
Yeah,
dog is challenging for some reason, I have no resentment. I find it cute. I
yeah,
find it cuddly. It's like, that's
yeah.
okay. Do you know,
But when it's dinner time, they're so cooperative. It's great.
but I was saying to my mum this morning, right, and this is going to sound terrible, and it just goes to show how spoilt my dog is. And my, especially in the evening, my dog likes milk and will not go to bed. And she sleeps on my bed and will not go to bed until she's had her milk, right? But sometimes in the morning, she looks at you like, because you're making a cup of tea or a cup of coffee or something, and she wants milk. And then you put it in the bowl and she doesn't want it. She like sniffs it and is like, that's not what I wanted. Now, bear in mind, we are talking about a dog and a rescue dog as well. So it's like, where the hell she learned to be fussy from, I don't know, right? But she has really high standards for somebody that was once homeless. And so I thought, do you know what? I'll put some honey in it, right? She goes over because she likes honey, and I like to give her a little
Yeah,
bit of honey every day. Yeah, sniffed it, wasn't happy. Right, so it's just like, and no, it's fine, it's fine. So I pour the milk away, rinse out the bowl, and obviously there's still honey in the bowl because honey's very sticky. Put that down. Yeah, she had that then. She was more than happy. And I just like, I wouldn't do that for any human being.
right.
You would be wearing the bowl and on your way to A&E with stitches. if you were a human being and tried to do that to me.
Yeah.
But my dog, I'm trying to make amends for some grievance that she feels I have because I put down milk when actually, apparently, she wanted the honey.
Honey only, yeah. So there was this, I don't know if you've heard the saying over in England, but my my dad certainly said it. I'm not sure if my mother ever said it, but when they're disciplining you, they say this will hurt me more than it will hurt you.
Yeah.
Okay. So I got that one time from my dad before I got a nice spanking, and I wasn't in total agreement with that. But so one night with my mom, she, I did all the cooking as well. So I did everything. So I cook a beautiful meal, and I'm not eating it. And I didn't put any honey in it, but she's not eating it. And again, it must have been a frustrating day. And I said, listen, I do everything from you. I cook your meals. I do this. I wipe your butt. I do all the laundry. I'm renovating your house. You have to show some appreciation. So please eat your meal. You need your strength. You need to keep up your strength. Eat the meal. And she wouldn't do it. So I turned off the kitchen light, left her in the dark, and went downstairs and I did some laundry. I took my emotions out on an innocent load of laundry. I slammed the lid down, and I got over it a little bit, and I went upstairs looking for, ready for round two with my mom. And I turn on the kitchen light, and she's sitting with her hands folded in her lap, and her knife and fork are on the plate, and the plate was cleaned. And she ate in the dark her meal.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what to say, but that was definitely this will hurt me more than hurt you moment. And she was a good guilt tripper. And she just, so I just leaned in and said, thank you. And that never happened again after that. But you don't know, I guess, if you're getting through or not. But boy, at that moment, I got through, and I didn't. I don't think I handled it well, but I think she did. But she realized in the dark that maybe she does need to show some appreciation and stuff like that. So that was an important moment for us.
I was going to say, I think that's something actually incredibly important to reflect on, because people, like I said, people who are experienced in care and people who are experienced with looking after their parents will understand that these people don't see you as a caregiver. Okay, you're their son, you're their daughter, and you might be doing an amazing, diligent job. They don't care. They're still the same person. And I think that's that thing I was saying, trying to explain that it's difficult to teach people. Regardless of what they need, they are still the same person. The body has let them down, but their mind is still the same personality.
Yeah.
And with that comes all of those personality quirks, that stubbornness. And it might be what's best for them. But if you were an individual in the prime of your life who could easily bite their nose to spite their face, that doesn't change when you're 95 and need caring. You're still going to be like, yeah, screw you. And you're like, yeah, but you're suffering. I can live with that. I've only got 93 days left. I'm more than happy to live with my own stubbornness. Fuck you. I know I'd be that cantankerous. I'm that cantankerous now. That's no way that's going to get easier as I get older for people. I don't
know if you want to broadcast that.
There's nothing my family would hear that they'd be like, no, that's what he is. He is that ignorant.
Yeah.
And he loves it. He will dine out on his own ignorance till the day he dies, and my family know that. And but it's important, I think, for the people that give the care, who are the ones that, like you say, in that moment where you just, I've got to get out of the room, I've got to turn the light off, I've got to go and do something. You end up racked with guilt, and you think, I must be a terrible person. That's my mum upstairs. Blah. Yeah. Don't forget, that's the same woman that loves winding you up. That's the same woman that can see you getting upset, or the same father that can see you getting upset and take pleasure from it. I remember working in a day centre years ago, 15 years ago now. Loads of adults with learning disabilities, various different physical and cognitive. Wow, some of the most spiteful people you could ever be around sometimes. They could really dish out punishment, emotional punishment to somebody, and love every second of it.
Yeah.
And people, if you're not knees up, knees deep in care work, people don't realize just how emotionally demanding it can be.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are listening to this and you're hearing that, please take solace. You're doing the best job you can possibly do.
Yeah. And also you got to, on the airplanes, they say when the oxygen masks drop down, put yours on first before you tend to your child or others. You got to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
Because it'll creep up on you. It did with me. I'm a guy, I can handle this, it's no big deal. And when I renovated the house, I actually made like a man cave in the basement where I'd exercise. And so I worked out on a regular basis, but still the emotional stuff, it can creep up. So you really got to care for yourself so you can care for that person and be 100% or as close to that as possible. So that's an important lesson that I learned. That was almost too good of a lesson. And also, if you're really stressing out, your loved ones get to feel that tension, and then they may feel guilty that you're there. So if nothing else, you put on a brave face when you're dealing with them. But there was fun. My mom, again, so she never swore. And I had a rough time, and so I let out some choice words, and then I apologized because I knew how much that would upset her. And I said, "I'm sorry, Mom, but this parenting thing is tough." And she says, and this is the lady who raised 6, and she says, "I guess, but I never swore." And I said, "Okay, you're right. You're better than me. You got it." So it's pretty good lessons. But out of the 6 kids, so I'm the guy wiping her butt several times a day. And I was the only one in the beginning, at least. She couldn't remember my name. And she had a pretty wicked sense of humor. So I thought she was kidding. But one morning, I'm taking care of business, and she says, "Now, what is it I call you?" And I said, "You're kidding, right?" And she says, "No." I said, "Okay, name your kids." And she goes, "Laurel, Michael, David, Carol, DC." And I went, "Okay." And she was completely stumped.
Oh, wow.
And I said, "I'm Mark, your favorite son." She goes, "I don't have favorites." I said, "Well, you have a favorite to forget." And after a while, she got over it. But I had to put in big block letters, Mark, and I taped it to the ceiling. So when I would come in the morning, she'd be laying in bed and she'd look up, and I'd say, "Good morning." And she would look, her eyes would shoot up, and she would get the help from the visual aid. And she goes, "Hi, Mark." And she was very proud of getting it. And then after a while, we were fine. But that was an interesting moment. So I have a chapter in the book called "Does Wiping Butt Cause Amnesia?" And I have scientific proof that it in fact does. So
it's obviously we're getting close to the end, and you have an incredible capacity to take this all with kind of just goodwill. Because it's not easy, when you're going through all of that and your mum doesn't remember your name, but to take it kind of with such goodwill is an incredible personality trait.
Well, again, I have to credit, I guess, my folks for that. They went through some adversity and stuff like that. I don't think my mom ever complained of pain. She was a tough cookie. She was a only child and had some tragedies early in her life, and I think maybe she put up some emotional walls Well, I know she definitely did. And I was able to break through some of those earlier in life. And I think that's another reason I took over this job, because I got her to open up, and I liked what I saw once I got her to open up. But my dad also was a tough cookie. He wouldn't go to the doctor. He'd say, this, he had a funny walk, and he got injured. And instead of going to the doctor, he said, I'm going to walk it out. So he would just, instead of taking the car uptown, he would walk, and you see this silly walker going, and but he was tough. He said, no, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. When he had heart disease, and that's a horrible thing to go through. It may be a little easier now, I don't know, but it was about a 7-year death plan for him. He died in 1997. In 1995, I was working on a stage adaptation of a Fellini movie, Eight and a Half, in L.A. And we were working on this for a long time. And I got into my Italian roots, and my grandfather came over in 1895, and nobody had been back since to this little village in southern Italy. And so my dad was 80 at the time, and it took me about a year and a half to talk him into it. So um, he got excited about it, I guess, and I didn't know how bad the disease was for him. I would see him a few times a year, and he put on a brave face. So at 80, he's on an airplane going to Europe for the first time. During the war, he had an ear issue, and he wasn't allowed to fly. So he was a chemist, so he worked on chemical warfare in Utah. So this was a big deal for him, plus with his disease. So I didn't realize how bad it was, and my brothers didn't tell me. One brother told me when we came back, we never expected him to come back. I'm going, that would have been nice to know.
Yeah.
I got this guy. And so I spoke a little Italian. My dad spoke no Italian. His father never taught anybody, just wanted to become an American. And so we get to Rome, and I see my dad looking at a curb, and he really had to think about whether he could step up to this thing without help or not. And that's when I realized how serious this was. So it was amazing. But we're there 16 days traveling around Europe, or at least in Italy. And I planned a really good, I guess, not really a vacation, but a journey. And then we got to this village, and it was just lovely. And there were some rumors about my great grandfather. He was the mayor of this village back in the maybe 1870s, maybe 1880s, and we heard he was run out of town for committing adultery as the mayor with his married secretary. And and I don't know how that rumor came to the U.S. because it was just his family that came, and it was like, in Italy, really, infidelity is a bad thing. I thought he'd be made prime minister or something, but.
Yeah.
So he escaped to the U.S. He came with his oldest son, and we didn't know all the details, but that was in 1891 that we learned when we went to Italy. And then it took him 4 years to earn enough money to send for the rest of the family, which was the wife, the daughter, and the youngest son, who ended up being my grandfather. And so we went over there. We weren't sure if we were going to be run out of town like my great grandfather or not. So the village was 200 people at the time, and the entire police force was one guy named Vito, and he also happened to be the town historian. So when he heard the two men from America have come, he launches into this story, and I'm like, what the heck is that about? Because he didn't know the name; he just heard America. So I'm thinking, did only two people from this village ever go to America? And this, again, was over 100 years ago. So I asked Paolo, we found one guy that spoke some English. So I asked him to translate for me. And he says, oh, yeah. Back then, the mayor was having an affair with his secretary. But the village was afraid of this mayor. He was a powerful man. And then the rumor started spreading around the region and brought a lot of shame onto our village. And nobody was happy. But again, they were afraid of the mayor. And then they said one day a man stormed into the mayor's office, and scolded both of them and said, "You must stop this affair, or you will leave this village." And the village ran him out of town. And the hero of the story was my great grandfather, not the bad mayor.
Ah.
And it took that trip to clear the family name. And again, we don't know how the other one traveled to the U.S., but it did. And so we cleared the family name, and it was very cool, especially for my dad. And then the house of my great grandfather was still there, and they showed us the house.
Nice.
And we had a lovely time. My dad said that was one of the highlights of his life, and he survived it for 2 more years. And I shot a documentary of it because, again, I wanted to record the family history. Nobody else wanted to come with us. So it's just me and my dad, and I filmed this thing, and the documentary is on YouTube and actually on my Cup of Tea on the Commode website as well. And it was very very emotional time, but also, we had 16 days. It was just me and my dad, and he wasn't doing super well. So I learned a lot of the caregiving, I guess, responsibilities there because his life was literally in my hands. And but that was that was a very special trip for my dad.
That's amazing. Just lastly, which is a random question that I like to ask people, and I think you'll find this very easy. Just completely engage in your imagination. Imagine you could go back in time to anywhere you want, any place, any when. Where would you go? What car would you drive? And what music would you be listening to?
Okay, I'll tell you, because I've thought about this before, and I'll start off with this. I wouldn't change anything in my life. I know that wasn't
No, that's okay.
Okay, because where I am right now is pretty good. And if any of these choices, like I always think, oh, if I invested in Apple in the 80s when I had, an Apple, things would be very different. Or if I got that role, or if I married that girl or whatever. Life is really good now. So if I changed anything, I wouldn't have been able to, I think, step up and take care of my mom, or have those 8 days with my dad, or that trip to Italy with my dad or something. But but I'll go back to my imagination. So
yeah, if you could just visit somewhere.
My friend and I, a high school friend and I, who we ended up going to college together too. In high school, we drove down to Florida. My uncle lived on Singer Island, which is just off a little peninsula off West Palm Beach. And he was my favorite uncle, a really fun guy. So I said, we're gonna go to Florida for spring break. And so he and I are in his Camaro.
Oh, nice.
We're listening, and a lot of the music that we played just seemed to be perfect. And it's a 20-hour drive. It's not a fun drive, but you're certainly excited to see the palm trees and all that business. And the Marshall Tucker Band is playing on the radio. Or not the radio, I think maybe probably cassette tapes at that point. Yeah. And it just that was great, just super cruising music, and it was a very special time.
I mean, that's a teenage dream right there, isn't it? Camaro, just driving down in a Camaro, listening to music on your way to spring break.
And each song seemed to be perfect.
Yeah.
The Marshall Tucker Band had one, like "On the Highway" is the name of this one song, I think, and it was just fantastic. So that was I haven't thought about that in a long time. So thanks for sparking that memory. That was good.
Thank you for sharing it, and thank you very much for sharing everything you have on the podcast. It's been absolutely amazing to listen to, and I've really appreciated it.
Oh, cool! It was my pleasure. And what I love about this is, anytime I get to share my story, it keeps my mom in the present, which is a gift to me. So I thank you for that opportunity.
Thank you. And that was Mark, a cup of tea on the commode. What a fascinating conversation, a fascinating guy. And please do check out the links for the audiobook, the paperback, Mark's website. And if you are somebody who's going through this, or has been through this, or is worried about doing it, do take some solace in heart that you can only do the best you can do, and that loving a parent can come with consequences, for want of a better term, and you can only do your best with that love. And sometimes, even if you don't realize it, that love means a lot more than you have the capacity to understand. For everyone that's listened this far, for everyone that's liked, subscribed, and who follows, as always, thank you very much. It is appreciated. And wherever you are from, whatever you believe, please take care and be blessed.